welcome to the show, Kim.
Hello. I'm so excited.
I know, I'm so stoked to have you here. I've been following you on Instagram for a while, and when your account first came up, Move That Girl, I just thought it was so refreshing. And so, like, the way you tell stories, the way that you share your experiences is really relatable. I wanted to start with you sharing what motivated you to start this account, because it actually hasn't been that long, has it? A couple years?
Yeah, I think there's some day in September that's saved on my calendar that is the anniversary. It just turned 3 last month.
Ooh.
2, 3, 3, I think.
Kind
Um,
of age. I'm like, wait, am I what
it
year?
has to be 3 because I started the account before I started surfing.
Okay.
So I know like my starting to surf journey was part of that because I also took swimming lessons before I learned to surf, and that was part of it. So I started, it's got to be 3 years ago. So
Nice. Happy anniversary.
not, thank you. Not a long-standing account, but I'm starting to feel like it's maybe not stable while I've been moving, but stable.
Yeah. What was your original inspiration? Tell everyone more about your account.
Yeah, it was really, man, I was like an athlete as a kid, and I was in a larger body then too, and I experienced some gear barriers. Like I grew up playing softball, but then like because of really like bullying kind of stuff, I got out of sports, out of any sort of like physical activity space for about a decade, and then started diving back into it, but found a bunch of barriers, like gear-based barriers. Like I started playing hockey um in 2019, and not only is there just like this really 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 limited amount of women's hockey gear, but there at the time was zero plus size women's hockey gear. At this point, as of last year, I have like a pair of hockey chest pads designed for a woman that fits me. They still don't make pants in my size, so I'm wearing men's pants, and that matters when you're playing a full contact sport and you have a differently shaped pelvis that needs to be protected. So like it was kind of born out of like this journey of getting back into sports as an adult. And like now that I'm like mentally over the social stigma of being a person in a larger body in sports, I'm still facing the barriers of gear. Like whether that's active wear or the safety gear, like I'm sure we'll wind up talking about wetsuits tonight. Um, So like there's just every sport that I've gotten into, there has just been barrier after barrier after barrier. The first like real big barrier I hit was getting into kayaking and finding a life jacket that fit me. And I had like a terrible experience in a recreational equipment store that shall go unnamed here in Seattle. Um, that like I went shopping for a life jacket and I was like, this is what I need. And the salesman like literally told me, you're not going to find anything that fits you. Um, and I was like, really? So I left the store and went and found one that fit me elsewhere, but it was really hard to find that life jacket. And like every step I've taken to get into a new sport, there has been some sort of gear-based barrier. And that was really the impetus for starting the account. And since then, it's grown to kind of talking about all sorts of barriers and experience that people in larger bodies experience, but especially in the sporting world. Like I try to focus on sports-based stuff, but every now and then I'll have like just a regular life rant.
Yeah, I love your rants.
Right.
Keep them coming.
I've got one that's like brewing inside of me right now.
Ooh, do we want to jump right into it, or do you want to say
It
that?
I'll save it. I'll save it. It has nothing to do with surfing, so
Oh, okay. It's a rant nonetheless. I'm sure it needs to
yeah.
be heard. So, being a child that like stopped doing sports because you felt like you were bullied and you didn't feel like there's a space for you, what kind of things did you have to overcome to then come into adulthood and be like, I want to do the sports that I'm passionate about?
Yeah, that's a great question. when I turned 30, you're going through like the decade shift and you're kind of self-evaluating every time you change a decade, I'm coming up on the next decade soon. So like almost kind of hitting that a little bit again. But when I turned 30, I started really looking at like self-evaluating when was the last time I felt unencumbered by other people's opinions of me. And after a lot of, soul searching and internal thought, I realized that it was about when I was like 10 years old. Turns out there's actually some like research and science to back this up that like that's when peer pressure starts to take like a really, really like become a much bigger player in a lot of kids' lives is around 10 years old, like the third grade. So when I kind of figured that out, I started kind of asking myself, like, what would 10-year-old Kim do? And the first decision I made was 10-year-old Kim wanted a pair of purple high tops. So 30 whatever year old Kim at that point bought a pair of purple high tops. And it became like this thing where I was letting 10-year-old Kim make a lot of my adult life decisions. Like it started in clothing and kind of expanded. 10-year-old Kim wanted to play hockey. So 33-year-old Kim started playing hockey. And once I started playing hockey, there was also, I should say, there was also like this switch that flipped in my head. What are the rules about potty language on this podcast?
It's whatever you're comfortable
Great.
hearing.
Just wanted to
Whatever
check.
people, yeah.
Because I literally had this thought when I turned 30, that was just like, there was like this switch that flipped in my brain that just said, I do not give a fuck what other people think of me. And that was kind of partnered with the like, that kind of actually led to the thoughts about when was the last time I felt unencumbered by other people's opinions of me. Um, like 10-year-old Kim did not care what other people thought of her. She just wanted to like wear high tops and backwards hats, and she wanted to play hockey, and she wanted to surf, and she wanted to do all this stuff that adult Kim had stayed away from. In like I would say in part like finances were a piece of it. Like I gotta stop taking up very expensive sports. um,
Don't.
I really want to learn to dive though. um, but it was really this thing where like I started letting 10-year-old Kim, who did not care what other people thought of her, make a lot of decisions in my
Were you
life.
wanting to say 10-year-old Kim didn't give a fuck? Is that why you were asking about potty language?
Yeah, well, it was like the thought, like when I turned 30 and that switch flipped, and it was like suddenly I don't give a fuck what other people think of me. Like that thought triggered the sort of self-reflection of when was the last time I felt unencumbered by other people's opinions of me. And I keep repeating that same phrase because that was actually the phrase that was going through my head. Like that was what I was evaluating. So like that thought, like I don't give a fuck anymore, led to figuring out which version of me gave the least fucks. And that was 10-year-old Kim. And it turns out 10-year-old Kim was a dope little child with big dreams. And now she has taken over my life in so many ways, and she's so much cooler than 30-year-old Kim ever could have mustered up without her.
That's so great for me to hear from you, particularly in this point in time, because I've been thinking about that a lot in my life. I'm like, man, what was like, I mean, I was a little bit older, like 16, 17. I'm like, that Laura was ruthless as fuck. Like, that Laura
Yeah,
was not thinking about what she had to lose. She was thinking about missing her opportunities for things,
yeah.
And then as an adult, it's like you tend to overthink the consequences of
Oh
everything.
yeah.
And I've been going back to that. I'm like, what would she do? She would not care. Like she would have already been off doing the thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So sharing that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad that you started this account. I think you've shared so many amazing inspirational stories. Let's get to size inclusivity and sporting gear. Ooh, yeah, this is the topic. Yes. And I mean, like, I'm not a larger bodied person. I mean, I would say I'm short and curvy, so that is not exactly the mold of fitting clothes, but I don't have as much
Right.
difficulty finding clothing. And even at my size, I do see the lack of size inclusivity. So I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I mean, man, I think there's a lot of social stigma around larger bodies, obviously. Gosh, I was thinking about this earlier today because today actually, like, I have a bunch of autoimmune conditions and I have to keep like really tight control over what goes into my body in order to not have a bunch of like inflammation and flare-ups and stuff like that. So, like, there was a Facebook memory this morning that reminded me, like, at some point today was like 200 days since the last time I ate refined sugars or grains or legumes. At this point, I'm like 2,400 something days. I'm like coming up on 7 years of that lifestyle. um, so I was reflecting on this because every time I ever posted one of those milestones, people would respond about the size and shape of my body. And I got super salty about it this morning and posted a diatribe to Facebook about how um, some of the biggest barriers we face in large bodies, especially when it comes to the sporting world, is the social stigma, because a lot of people look at people in large bodies, fat bodies, plus size bodies, and think they're uh dumb and lazy and inept and incapable of activity. Um, and that could not be farther from the truth. So there's like these social barriers that a lot of people in sporting communities, like, it is like it's society wide. It's like a socio-cultural belief that fat people are bad in many different ways. But it is uniquely nefarious in the sporting community because you have a lot of people who are very dedicated to like this physical activity that they think requires thinness, but it actually requires like strength and mobility.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe not even that much strength. Like, no one ever has said that you have to be good at things. Like, and I try to, like, I hold this dear to my heart. Do I always want to improve? Yes. Surfing brings me joy and I am terrible at it. Um, as long as it continues to bring me joy, I will continue to be terrible at it. Do I want to improve? Yes. But you can pry the joy of being in the ocean from my cold, and it's going to be cold because I'm in the Pacific Northwest, dead fingers.
Yeah,
Um,
when you came to visit, that was like the first time you surfed without a wetsuit, right? Or did you wear, what did
I
you
wore
wear?
in San Diego, I wore the wetsuit because it was like, I don't know, April. Um,
Okay,
but that was the warmest water I've ever surfed in. The water was
that's right.
62
That's what it
degrees
was.
that day. I've never been in water. I've never surfed without a wetsuit. I've never surfed
That's
without booties, quite frankly, because every time I go to California, I'm afraid of stingrays.
fair
Um,
enough.
but I like 4-3 is a summer suit here. Uh,
Dedication.
yeah. Um, but so like if you're able to get over the social stigma of entering into a sports space in a large body, especially as a woman in a large body, because there's like a different unique kind of like hate for women in large bodies, especially in sports like surfing, where like, let's say you are in those warmer water regions, you're going to be in some sort of bathing suit rather than a wetsuit. Um, but once you get over the social barriers, you're faced with gear-based barriers. Um, and there's definitely like, there's a reason why we see more plus size representation in surfing in warm water. And the reason is like, once like it's easier to get over the social barrier than the gear barrier. So like, if you can do the self-healing that you need to do to get over like what people think of you when you go out there in your bathing suit in the water, way easier access in warm waters. In cold water, like uh based on temperature readings, which I'm a little bit skeptical of, the last time I went surfing, the water was 48 degrees. Um, you don't survive in those conditions without the right gear. So like, even if you can overcome the social, like socialized barrier, the bullying and the exclusion and the like surfing is a very exclusive community. Um, if you can get over that exclusionary barrier, you're still faced with a gear barrier in cold water regions.
Right.
And I forget the question that I'm answering, but did I get there?
Uh, I forget too. I was like following along. I'm like, yes, yes. Um, I think it is so it's such a detriment to people because it's like I think what you're saying with like the healing and all of the societal things, that's a big job unto itself. That's
Yeah.
an enormous job. You hope that people will have the chance to get there like you have in your
And
30s,
it
right?
sucks to get past that and find more barriers. It
Uh,
really truly does, to like finally be at a place in your own soul where you're like, I'm going to do the things I want to do regardless of what anyone else around me thinks. And then you get there and you're like, okay, but I guess I can't. Like I spent a year looking for a wetsuit before I decided to go custom because I wasn't going to gain access. Also, the only thing that allowed me to go custom at the time that I did, because that's expensive, was a pandemic stimulus check. Like that was not in my budget. Like I had this gift of money to stimulate the economy, and I chose to stimulate the wetsuit economy, which really frustrates me because the wetsuit economy doesn't want me. Um, Not like the company that I went through is great. They did a great job. My wetsuit fits like a glove. I love my wetsuit. Um, and they only do customs. Uh, but like the wetsuit industry very much seems to have no interest in the like let's just talk about statistics.
yeah,
um,
let's do it.
in the United States, the average woman's size is a 16-18. 68% of women in this country wear a size 14 plus. About half of wetsuit brands stop at a size 12. Another probably like 25% of them go up to a 14 or 16. There is one company, I think, right now, and like my stats, what I'm working out of in my head is a little bit outdated. It's been a minute since I worked on my wetsuit size chart comparison. I have a spreadsheet. Um, like there are no companies in North America that go above a size 18.
Hmm,
And let's just remember that 18, like 16, 18 is average. The wetsuit industry is not even serving average women.
right,
They're not serving like those companies that stop at a size 14. And let's be real, that's a small 14.
right,
Like,
right. Like a
like
teenage.
a 14 wetsuit fits like a 12.
Yeah.
And like let's even talk about the companies that use junior sizing in their women's lines. um, like the wetsuit industry in at large, like as a whole, at best is serving 42% of no 68%. They're not serving 68%. I can't do I'm not I have a degree in graphic design.
32.
I can't do the
Yeah,
math.
but then that's also assuming like who's actually like in the accessing and in the water.
And
But
how that serves as a barrier to people getting involved in water sports. And
yeah,
it's this cycle where like, and I've had so many conversations about this with women through my account. Like they'll say, I want to surf, but I can't find a wetsuit. Can you point me in any direction? And I will say, well, here's my size chart that compares all what's available. At your size, you're probably going to have to go custom. And they
yeah,
will say, I can't afford to go custom. And I will say, well, you might be able to find a men's suit that fits you, like in terms like just being able to get it on. But what happens when a woman wears a men's wetsuit? Like if I were to put on a men's wetsuit right now, I'm 5'8" and I'm on the tall side of like I'm the very tallest of average. Like 5'9" is where they start calling it you're out of the average range for women. Um, the wetsuit that would fit my body in terms of like getting it on my midsection is designed for a man who is 6'4".
oh wow.
Yeah.
Jeez. So you
Which
like a
means
long
that like I've
coat.
got extra fabric down to here. I've got extra fabric at my ankles. I've got water traps in my knee pits and my elbow pits.
Right,
Um, it's a miserable experience. I'm probably chafing in places. Like large men's wetsuits are only a solution in that it allows you to get into the water.
right,
It's not a long-term solution. It's not even a good solution for most of us. It actually poses safety risks when you're in extremely cold water because you're going to have water sitting inside your wetsuit and not developing that barrier that it's supposed to.
right.
Like like having a too big wetsuit when you're surfing 45-degree water is a safety issue.
Absolutely. And I mean, popping up on a wave, doing what you need to do, and having a suit that's
Yeah.
essentially in your way is not going to help.
Yeah. Yeah. Um So yeah, there are no plus size women's wetsuits in North America. There are, I think, one brand that produces a full suit out of Europe that I'm aware of, and another brand that produces pieces that are more appropriate for like paddleboarding or scuba diving than they are for um, surfing.
Yeah.
Um, and then there's like this one like weirdo wetsuit that is available that like I've tried it. It's cheap neoprene. It's like that porous, itchy stuff. And again, when we're talking about like first and foremost, we should be thinking of wetsuits as safety equipment. Um, because where I'm surfing, that's exactly what it is.
Right.
It is life-saving equipment. Cheap, porous neoprene will not save your life in 45-degree water. So like the one option that we might have, I've tried it on
Right.
and it
It
fits
puts you
super
at
weirdly.
risk.
It seems to be made for an Oompa Loompa. Um, and two, it's just not going to keep me safe in the context I need it for.
Right. And that is all that kind of self-fulfilling story that comes back
Yeah,
to you,
yeah.
that one
Oh my
story in
gosh.
the beginning that already told you that you weren't allowed to be in these sports, and that's the
I
fucked up. That's
I
fucked up.
once had a man reach out to me via my DMs on Instagram after I posted, like I was posting specifically about the wetsuit issue this time. And this
Yeah.
this male human came into my DMs and he very quickly established himself as a wetsuit supplier. Like
Mhm.
he's the intermediary that goes between like the companies and the surf shops. He's the guy that brokers wetsuits to surf shops. Um and he was basically like, there's no demand. I'm like, well, how do we know there's no demand if we can't try anything because there's no supply? Like
Right.
in the Pacific Northwest, you cannot get into the water to surf
Right.
without a wetsuit, without putting your life at risk. Like 60 degrees is what's considered the line for dangerously cold water, like kill you cold water. At the height of August temperatures on a hot, hot year, our water here might hit 60 degrees. It's probably more likely like 58 or 59. But that 60-degree line is like kill you cold water. Um, and they're like, you can't surf without a wetsuit here. And this guy
Right.
is telling me like, well, there's no demand for above a size 16. I'm like, no, they're like, I've got hundreds of women who have responded to a survey who are saying, I need a 16 plus. I have had probably at this point at least 100 conversation, like private conversations with individual women who are like, I need a wetsuit, I can't find one. Um, and it's like this thing like, how do you know what the demand is when the item is critical to participation in such a way that has barred people in those bodies from participating? Like, we don't know how many plus size women would surf cold waters because none of us have access without spending $700 on a wetsuit.
I hate to say that I hear everything you're saying because having had a surfwear line that I would go and sell in shops, this
Yeah.
isn't a story unique to even just
Oh yeah.
larger size wetsuit, and that's what's crazy about it, and you say this, and it makes me think that it's not about supply and demand, it's about
Exclusion.
white male patriarchy.
Yeah, it's about who belongs, and
Yeah,
who belongs is white men.
exactly. And it's like me selling women's surfwear, like rash guards and bikini bottoms in stores when there wasn't that much women's surfwear on the market, and them
Yeah.
saying that, well, nobody buys that stuff. Well, how are they going to buy that stuff if you don't have it in your store? And now
And
you look at so many options that are on the market. And I was reflecting on that the other day, and I'm like, these fucking assholes. Like, you know
and
what I
that's
mean?
yeah, that's a story that has been told 1,000 times in different ways for plus size women. Like there was one major retailer a few years ago, back in 2020, who has always served up to a size, well, not always, but for a long time has done a little bit better with size inclusivity than a lot of other major retailers. They were selling up to a 3X, which by the way is not the same as an XXXL. A 2X is not the same as an XXL. These are different sizes. Like the women's size scale is fucked. Um, but so they were a little bit more inclusive. They added, I think, one, maybe two sizes, and decided they were going to start okay. So prior to this point, you had to buy online if you wanted plus sizes. In 2020, they decided they were going to have plus sizes on the racks in stores because they got that feedback that like we would like to be able to try stuff on because like historically clothes don't fit very well for us because
Right,
like the average, like the straight size person has 1,000 options for any one garment, so they can shop different brands that make different cuts to get things that fit better. Plus size people, especially plus size women, have like 5 options for one garment, and you might not be able to find a cut that fits you very well because you don't have as many options. So you want to be able to go in and try stuff on, but stores don't usually they don't reserve floor space for plus sizes. So this retailer was like, we're going to reserve store space for plus sizes. They ran like a half-hearted, half-assed marketing campaign. To the best that we can sort of suss out, they did not really alter their targeting. They did not do a lot of research on how do we reach the people that have never been able to shop in our stores. Also, they did this in the middle of a pandemic. So without marketing that they had plus sizes on the store floor for us to try on, not really effectively marketing, I should say. And with like I heard about it through word of mouth, not through any sort of ad campaign. And I heard about it too late because when people didn't come into the store to try things on and buy them, they stopped doing that and said, well, no one came in. But it's the height of the pandemic,
right,
and they didn't try to market to the people that needed to know.
right.
And then they're like, there's no demand. Sorry.
Yeah. It's like setting the whole thing up for failure.
Yeah. And
Completely saying,
this
let
is
me
a
prove
rinse.
you that there's no demand, but I'm not gonna put any effort into it.
Yeah. I've had this conversation 1,000 times with the fact that like how can you possibly know there's no demand?
Right.
You're not expanding your marketing research outside of your normal body of people. Like unless you're actually intentionally doing focused research to audiences that you haven't historically reached, you don't know anything about demand. So
I mean, do you see anything that is like a glimmer of hope to you? Are you seeing brands becoming more size inclusive, or are you seeing them saying they're becoming more size inclusive and not being size inclusive?
I'm going to lean into the second part and also offer that I think in the last like let's maybe call it 23 and 22, 2022, 2023, we did start to see some progress
Yeah.
in expanded size lines and more body representation, and all this stuff. And there were some brands that were doing the shitty thing where they like use plus size marketing, but then only sell up to an XXL, which again, a reminder, is not the same as a 2X. I'm a size 2X. XXL is 3 sizes too small. 2 sizes too small, 3 sizes too small. Because it goes like XL, XXL, XXXL, 1X, 2X, 3X. Which is dumb. But the whole thing is dumb. Sorry. Yeah, so I think we started to see some progress and there was some hope.
Yeah.
With the advent and sociocultural explosion of GLP-1 weight loss medications, there's like this idea taking hold that if you can lose weight by any means, you should lose weight by any means. And this expectation that people are going to use those medications. It feels like this moment where we're trying to eradicate fat bodies. And we have actually seen industry regression. A lot of really, really, really great plus size women's companies are shutting down right now. Because they cannot compete in this marketplace. Retailers are not stocking their brands on the floor. Like there's the, supply chain kind of stuff where the cost of production like raises the cost of the product so much. And people in fat bodies, like let's just go with women in fat bodies. On average, we make 14% less for the same job as our straight sized peers.
Oh,
So when you
wow.
factor in the gender wage gap too,
Wow.
like fat women are extremely underpaid because like there's the gender pay gap, then there's the body size pay gap, and I would say even on top, like between there, you have the racial pay gap.
Yeah.
So like let's just imagine you are a fat Black woman. You're going to be making, I think I did the math once, it's been a long time, like on average, I think around 20% less than a thin white man. Like the pay gap issue creates like a financial issue where a lot of plus size women especially can't afford to participate in the economy that's available for us. Like
Right.
these smaller brands have to charge high prices, and I really believe that they deserve, like if they're participating in like ethical production, sustainable production, like paying their workers fairly, like the price on that garment is gonna be high. But for plus size women, we often can't participate in those brands, and we're left with things like Old Navy and Shein
Yeah.
because we're not equal participants in the economy because there's a big pay gap for women of color and for fat women, and it's intersectional, it compounds with all of the other things.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Wow.
it's yeah, so we've really seen this regression, and it's been heartbreaking to watch some really good brands go away because they can't make it in this economy, and at the same time be feeling like the world wants you gone. If like in the fat liberation community, there's a lot of conversation around look, if you want to take a GLP-1 to lose the weight, that's fine. That's a decision you get to make about your body. I have so many thoughts swirling in my head right now, and I'm trying to decide which lane to take. Like, first of all, that medication should be first and foremost primarily reserved for people who medically need it.
Right.
But right now there's like shortage for people that like need it for diabetes management because you've got skinny white women on their Facebook ads being like,
Right.
I now have a 6-pack, and I've got nothing against 6-packs. Good for you. But I think there are ethical issues with using it that way. But also, and I would never blame anyone for going with intentional weight loss because the social barriers and the social stigmas are so high.
Mhm.
I like my weight fluctuates significantly because of my autoimmune conditions. I have about a 40-pound weight range that I exist in. And I get treated right now, I'm at the low end of it because I have my autoimmune conditions very well controlled. I'm still just fat, but I get treated much better in this body than in my heavy version, which I'm sure will cycle back around again. It has several times at this point. Like there's a tangible difference in how I'm treated based on whether I weigh 280 or 240. So I don't judge anyone for pursuing intentional weight loss because your life will be easier thinner. But I also think that it's probably worth it to do the deep dive into internal healing work to be okay with your body as it is. I think that's a longer lasting result to be able to like I'm not pro body positivity. I don't want anyone to hear that. I'm very pro body neutrality. Like, this is my body. This is what I live in right now. And it is good because it is my home. Like, my body is good at all times, regardless of what it looks like, because it holds me. And it has taken me through so much.
Yeah.
I didn't expect to dive into this, and I forget where we're going. But basically, just like, I'm not going to judge anyone for intentional weight loss because it actually like makes it easier to survive in this world. But we also need to have space for people who are not going to pursue that for whatever reason. There have been fat people from the dawn of time, and there will be fat people to the end of time. And right now, we feel like we're in a moment in history where we're trying to be eradicated. And I'm not going to do the GLP-1s because I don't need them medically, and I have made peace with my body.
Right.
Um,
I think it's really interesting that you brought that up because I love that you're very aware of what's going on, really good with like the statistics, even though in the beginning you said numbers weren't your thing, but it sounds like numbers are your things. So
well, math. I can't do the math. I can I am autistic. So I have a
got the
wealth
facts
of just
down.
facts
Yes.
in like I store them all over in my body, and I just have to find the right spot to bring it out and be like a freaking Wikipedia article.
Well, it's serving you well here. You brought up the okay, what's the drug again? I know it as
It's like Ozempic, tirzepatide, like there are a bunch of different Mounjaro.
yeah.
They're the GLP-1 agonists is
Okay.
the class of drug.
So interestingly, like in the last couple of years, I noticed that kind of wave too of body inclusivity in surfwear and clothing and all of that, right? And all these campaigns. And in the last year or two, I'm like, what happened?
Yep.
What happened to all
Spanish.
these like
Ooh.
diverse bodies? Yeah.
Yeah.
And even brands that like, I mean, I probably won't name them, but I mean, even brands that are like women surfing brands that say that they're inclusive and
Yep.
at the forefront of this thing showing, went from showing all these diverse curvy bodies to now everybody's really thin. And
Yep.
I'd never put two and two together that it really has to do with this drug that's
This
available.
is a big conversation in like fat liberation communities and sort of fat positive communities. It's just that like we felt like there was hope. We
Yeah.
felt like there was progress. And the bigger these drugs became, the more it felt like we were regressing into like the economy where we don't exist again.
Can you explain, yeah, for people, body neutrality? I think you did explain it really well versus body positivity. Let's go into what body positivity means and why you're not.
Yeah, I'm sure I could get in many ways I'm gonna butcher this. There are like some harder definitions and some softer definitions, and I usually go with the softer ones. So body positivity is basically like you look at yourself in the mirror and you're like, this is like my body is great, ideal, perfect, I love it. And yeah, it's basically the label. Like you're always being positive about your body. To me, and in my autistic little truth-telling, justice-oriented brain, that has always felt like lying to myself because I rarely feel particularly positive about my whole body. I will say I feel great about my skin and my hair all the time. Um, but when I like look at my, like if I stand naked in front of the mirror, I'm not going to be like, she's hot. That's great. Beautiful. Love it. Um, but the place that I've come to, body neutrality, basically says like on any given day, I don't have to feel good about my body, but I also don't have to feel bad. Like I don't have to buy into the lie that because my body is fat, my body is bad. Um, it says like sometimes I have very complicated emotions about my body and I
Mhm.
don't always look at it in the best light. But like so the idea, I think one of the ideas that is kind of caught up in here in my mind is the idea of um, moral neutrality. So we often like to ascribe good and bad to things. Like we like this binary idea where like you have a good body or you have a bad body. And neutrality says you just have a body. um Same thing with like we do this with food all the time. We moralize food. Like this is good food and that's bad food. Food is morally neutral. We do this with emotions. These are the good emotions like happy and joyful and whatever, and the bad emotions, angry and sad. But emotions are morally neutral.
Yeah.
And we like it is not um like we don't have to ascribe the moral factor to things that are neutral. And that's how I feel about my body is that the world is telling me my body is bad in so many different ways at all times. This body positivity movement is telling me that like I'm supposed to feel good about my body at all times after living in a world that has told me it's bad for 38 years. Um and like body neutrality comes in and says you don't have to buy into either. It says you can just have a body. And man, years ago, a friend of mine told me this story where she was also in a larger body. Um, and some woman came up to her and told her, like the classic line that every fat girl has gotten for her whole life, you'd be really pretty if you lost some weight. Like I think every fat woman has heard that 1,000 times in their lives. I know I have heard it. I have heard it from strangers and friends and family. Like, um, but the story she told me about that moment was that she was just bold enough that day and brave enough that day to pull that woman aside and say, "Hey, can we talk about what you just said?" And she told some of her story, which included just an immense amount of tragedy and abuse as a child. Um, and she told this woman who said that thing to her, like, my body has endured so much
Mhm.
and has kept me safe. My body has been through so much and is still me. And I think about that all the time, like when I'm thinking about body neutrality, like I don't have to adopt a moral position on my body because it has kept me well. It has taken me through so much. It is the vessel that I operate in this world in, and other people don't like my vessel. And I don't feel like I have to feel great about it at all times, but I know it's worthy because it holds me. It is worthy of dignity and respect. It is worthy of acceptance and belonging because it contains me. Um,
Whew, you're gonna make
I know I'm
me
a little
here.
misty in here.
I mean, I'm not. I think it's something that I've been working on recently for myself. Just last couple of years, just being kind of crazy and realizing that society I also, think for women, unfortunately, regardless of what you look like, a society is going to tell you it's not good enough. And
Yeah.
that's like a crazy, crazy thing. And exactly
Yeah.
what you said is we attribute this good and bad to who we are physically. But everything you said, just like it's like washing over me like a wave of like intense emotion.
Yeah.
Because it really is a place that I'm working to get to as well. This place of body
It's been a
neutrality.
really long journey, but a really beautiful one. And I feel like I'm never going to be done with it. Like, there are always going to be times where I have to recenter myself around that idea of body neutrality.
Yeah.
Um, there are always moments when I like catch a glimpse of myself and I'm like, oh, really? And then I have to like reevaluate those thoughts and like capture them and say, you don't belong here. You're not welcome here. Get out.
Yeah. Yeah. It really is that practice of coming back to it. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's so many years of conditioning as well, right?
Yeah.
So you're
Yep.
fighting a whole lifetime of conditioning. And I mean, this thing that I would think about all the time at like as a teenager or as a kid, right? I grew up with like big brown legs and that I grew up in a very white neighborhood, right? So completely opposite from what most of the girls could wear, would wear, whatever, right? And I just remember wanting to always not wanting to be somebody else or look like someone else, but wanting to feel allowed to like who I already was. And
Yeah.
as I grew up, I realized like that's what I was fighting, not that I didn't like myself. It's that it felt like everybody was telling you you shouldn't like yourself. Uh,
Yeah. And that's a big piece of it, is just realizing that like they're wrong. Very, very wrong. Deeply, deeply wrong.
yeah. I mean, this all ties back to how accepted you feel in the lineup. It all
Yeah.
ties back to how well you can
Gosh.
perform as a surfer,
Yeah.
how much you can show people that there is demand. I can do this because if you gave me the right equipment, I could excel as a surfer. I could create that representation
Yeah.
and support the demand that wants to be there.
Yeah. And man, the lineup is a whole different story. Like, as a woman, you're already judged in the lineup. Um,
Yeah.
but then like as a fat woman, like as a fat person, when you fail at physical activities, the narrative that people have in their heads when they see you fail at these activities is that you failed because you're fat, not because you're new or you're having a bad day or you're like, I don't know, the new thing is pretty deep in it, but like there was a moment probably about a year ago where I was out on a local trail skateboarding, and skateboarding is relatively new to me. Kind of picked it up at the same time as surfing. Started longboarding and then eventually started dabbling in surf skate. But I was out on my longboard and I was like doing a kick push and I accidentally like hit one of my wheels with my pushing foot and I just ate shit. Like head over heels tumbled. Um and I was like, I got up pretty quickly, but it was a bad fall. And of course, it was the one time I decided not to wear all my safety gear. I'm also a big time safety nerd. And there were uh 4 or 5 people out on the trail that like watched it happen. And not a single person like stopped and asked me if I was okay. But then I also just like I remember standing there thinking about and this is another thing I could dive into for so long. Like, as a fat person, and I'm sure you've probably experienced this in some ways, maybe not with fatness, but being a brown person in a white world. Like your friends make these comments about other people, like they make a fat joke about someone else that they see, or they comment on something that that fat person over there is wearing or doing. So like one of the reasons we know that people have these thoughts is because they say them about other people to us. So I remember like getting up from that with where no one said like even so much of a hey, are you okay? And my ego was bruised. I had a scraped knee, but it was okay. Um, just thinking about a handful of different moments in my life where people in my life laughed and made jokes at other fat people failing at sports. Um, this is a YouTube phenomenon, like especially in my college years when YouTube was coming, like a lot of those early viral videos were fat people moving their bodies. Like we know what society thinks of us because you never hit it. And I just had that moment where I was like, oh, they probably think that I did that because I'm fat and not because I'm new.
Mm.
And then like there was a moment out in the lineup where like I uh like wiped out and my board was out of my control for like while I was, tumbling in the wave. Um and this other dude in the lineup got like really spicy with me about it.
Like,
Um and I just remember thinking like I just watched you give my friend Grace,
mm,
my female friend Grace. Why am I the one you're getting salty with when you gave her grace for a similar moment?
right.
I got your bullshit. And there are so many moments where you're just like, okay, like I get that even if you accept women, you're probably not going to accept fat women in the lineup. And like that kind of intersectionality and the compoundedness of like being woman plus something else. And how that, makes can make the experience a lot worse and a lot more exclusive in sort of like the push out sense, like you
Yeah.
don't belong here. um and just how like every time, like I know because society has never hid what they think of people failing at movement in fat bodies, what some people probably think of me when I fail at movement. And as someone who plays hockey and surfs and paddleboards and swims and like does all of these skateboards, I fail at movement a lot. And again, I know because like it's never been a secret what society thinks of fat people failing at movement. I know there are people thinking those thoughts about me. Um, and like I think this is part of the healing work. Like you have to be able to move past that in order to continue in your sport. And I forget where I was going with that again. Like, why did I land there? I'm rabbit trailing a lot. I'm sorry.
It's okay. What do you think it is that people need to heal within themselves to not be so judgmental on other people?
Yeah, I think like as a society, we need to understand that what fat people do with their bodies is none of your fucking business. Like what we eat and how we do activity. Like you don't know anything about our life or our situation or our ability or whatever. You don't know why we are the way we are. So just hang up your judgment hat in that regard. But I also think a lot of people's judgment of how to articulate this. A lot of people are really deeply worried about becoming fat.
Hmm.
Like that's like they put a
That
lot of
again is like
time.
a self-fulfilling thing. It's because they think fat people are bad.
Yeah, they think fat people are bad, and I don't think like science really demonstrates at this point that like being in the overweight category, and I hate the BMI, I don't even like I don't want to bring it up, but like the research uses it, so I don't really have a better set of language. Being in the overweight category is actually insular for your health. You have better health outcomes if you're just in that range above average weight than being average or below average. But what a lot of research is really demonstrating is that it's weight cycling, not being fat, that actually produces the worst health outcomes for people in fat bodies. Like people in fat bodies who just are fat have better health outcomes
Mm.
than people in fat bodies who weight cycle. Like a lot of that, like a lot of the stuff that we associate with being fat is actually more closely tied to weight cycling.
Like
Um,
health risks and stuff.
yes.
Yeah.
And where am I going with this? It goes back to like there's um so there's a lot of science to show that like for health, being fat is not actually as bad as it has been marketed as.
Yeah.
um but I don't think people who say they're trying to avoid being fat for health, that's probably their primary motivator. In a lot of the conversations that I've had and the way I hear other people talk about fat people, both like to me directly and in other like reading articles and research and seeing how people are talking about it on like their reels and whatever. Um, I think people are more afraid of the way fat people are treated because they know how they think of fat people. Like if I looked like that person, people would think the same thing I think about that person about me.
Right.
Like the social stigma, I actually think is the bigger driver for people trying to not be fat than actual health outcomes. And let's just talk about fucking the stress of being socially excluded all the time and what high cortisol levels do
Right.
to a body. Like it is stressful being fat in this
And
world.
then on top of that, like, we don't have a nutritious food supply.
Oh
We
yeah.
don't have homes that aren't filled with toxins and molds and things that, for a woman, that fluctuate your hormonal cycle.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like fucking set up to fail again. Like,
Yeah.
we're
I've had
fighting.
I've had so many conversations with my doctor about the food supply, because I have to be very careful with what I eat
Mhm.
because of all the autoimmune stuff.
Yeah.
And it is like, I mean, when I was down in California, we went out to eat and it was a challenge to find something to eat. And that was like that whole road trip, I was just trying to find things to eat.
Right.
Because I can't go out to eat like a normal human being. Meanwhile, people like probably look at my body and I'm like, and they're like, ah, cheeseburgers. Don't get
And
me
you're
wrong.
eating way healthier than they are.
I love cheeseburgers and I would eat more cheeseburgers if they didn't make me sick. Um, but also, and I try not to use my own diet as a defense thing because I actually think it's none of anyone's business. Like I know that I have good fatty behaviors because I have to be not in pain all the time. Um, but I actually don't think it's helpful to like the fat liberation movement as a whole to use my diet to defend my body. Because there's someone else that isn't doing that and they still deserve dignity and respect. Like, regardless of what you're putting in your mouth, regardless of what you're doing with your body in terms of activity, you still deserve to be treated like a human with dignity and respect. And like you belong here, like you are part of this world.
Well, thank you so much, Kim. I mean, I feel like, your vulnerability, I mean, it shows on your account, and you're so good with telling stories that make your content relatable. Regardless of what body anyone lives in, I think everything you said was very inspirational and it's making me reflect on myself and my own body, and in a really positive way. I mean,
It's
neutral.
making me reflect again too. like I haven't thought about some of this stuff in a little while.
No, it's really great. I mean, like, in my personal life, like, the timing of this conversation, it feels really profound for me. So, like, regardless of the podcast, like, I thank you for that. I think it was
Yeah.
really good to hear that. Let's tell people where they can find you, even though I did mention it earlier, but I want you to tell them.
Yeah, the best way to find me is to follow me on Instagram at Move Fat Girl. Honestly, that's really the only way.
I'll put the links in the show notes so you guys can find Kim. Well, you'll have to let me know if you ever make it down here to California, and hopefully one day you'll get to surf without a wetsuit because regardless of it being difficult to find one, it's way more
I feel
fun.
like the first time I surf without a wetsuit, I'm gonna try and pop up and just yeet myself to the moon. Like
Because
uh,
you overdid it.
I surfed in a bear
Promising.
suit last week for
Oh
surfing.
yeah, I saw that.
And when I took it off, I'm like, oh, this must be the difference between like surfing with a wetsuit versus surfing without a wetsuit because I just felt so light and free, but I was still in my wetsuit.
Right.
I was just in my wetsuit without a bear suit on top of it.
That's so awesome. Well, thanks for coming on.
Oh, it's been a delight.
I'm gonna let Denise. Hey, Denise, did you want to add anything or ask any questions?
I'm just riveted by the conversation and wanted to say thank you as Laura just did for like your openness, really going there, to like really emotional places and giving like great examples and the details, to express what it is like and what, like the wetsuit example when you said like the men's suit that you would have to get. It's
Yeah.
oh, okay. It's not just a little bit bigger. It's a lot bigger and just the wrong shape. It's just wrong.
And dangerous, in my opinion.
Yeah. You can't surf in that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Women do here. Like it's the only way, but it's not
yeah,
a great way.
well,
Like the
really,
difference between being in the ocean or not being in the ocean, I'll take
yeah,
the poor fitting wetsuit, but it's going to limit your time in the ocean
yeah. And your progress.
and your progress for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So really, really interesting conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you for having me. This has been great.
absolutely. Anytime. I was so stoked when you texted me. You're like, I'm coming to California. Do you want to catch up? And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
yes. I'm so glad
I'm
she messaged
hoping to come back in the spring again. Like I'm
Oh,
hoping that's an
good.
annual road trip now. So
Oh, perfect. Oh, yeah. You have a niece down here now. Well, in like
I
big.
do. Yeah. Out at Edwards.
Right. Cool. Well, thank you, Kim.